We often imagine the universe as something distant and cold, a black expanse scattered with points of light, silent and unreachable. But that picture only holds from far away. When we slow down and look closer, the universe reveals something softer, something shaped, something unexpectedly beautiful. Across the vastness of space, beauty does not arrive all at once. It unfolds. It appears in curves and shadows, in glowing clouds and perfect rings, in quiet symmetry and in slow, patient motion. It is written into the way matter gathers, the way light escapes, the way gravity leaves its fingerprints on everything it touches. Nothing here was designed to be admired, and yet so much of it is. For as long as humans have looked upward, the sky has offered more than navigation or measurement. It has offered patterns, points connected into shapes, stories traced between stars. Even before telescopes, there was a sense that the heavens were not random, that something deliberate moved above us, even if its meaning remained just out of reach. Today, with instruments that can see far beyond the limits of human sight, that feeling has not faded. If anything, it has deepened. The universe, when revealed in detail, is not less poetic. It is more so. Vast clouds glow in color where stars are born. Galaxies bend light into impossible geometry. Ancient stars swell and breathe as they approach the end of their long lives. Even emptiness itself takes on shape. This is not beauty in the human sense. It is not decoration or intention. It is the natural result of physics unfolding over immense spans of time. Gas responds to gravity. Light responds to energy. Matter follows motion. And from those simple rules emerge forms so striking, they feel almost symbolic. Tonight, the journey moves slowly through some of the most beautiful structures the universe has produced. Not as a list, not as a spectacle, but as a quiet passage. From calm symmetry to radiant birth, from motion to fading light, from presence to absence. Each object a different expression of the same underlying laws. There is no rush here. These sites have existed for thousands, millions, sometimes billions of years. They are in no hurry to change, and neither is this journey. The universe does not demand attention. It simply continues, shaping itself in light and silence. And so the journey begins, not with an explosion or a beginning, but with balance, with form held gently in place by gravity and time. A reminder that even in a universe defined by motion, stillness can be just as profound. Balance in the universe is rarely accidental. When it appears, it feels almost deliberate, as if chaos briefly agreed to hold still. There are places in space where gravity has arranged matter with such precision that the result feels more like geometry than astronomy. Clean edges, calm motion, light placed exactly where it needs to be. Drifting far beyond the familiar stars of the night sky, there exists a galaxy that seems to have forgotten how to be messy. It does not spiral outward in loose arms, nor does it blur into an indistinct glow. Instead, it presents itself as a near-perfect circle, isolated and complete, suspended against the black. At its center sits a warm, golden core, dense with ancient stars. These stars have long since passed their most energetic years. Their light is steady and soft, shaped by time rather than fire. Around this core, separated by a wide, empty gap, lies a ring of brilliant blue stars, younger and hotter, burning with a sharper intensity. The contrast is striking. Old light surrounded by youth, calm embraced by motion. The ring itself is astonishing in its precision. It does not warp or trail. It does not fray at the edges. It curves around the core with a smoothness that feels almost artificial, as if traced carefully rather than assembled by gravity. Between the ring and the core stretches a dark region tens of thousands of light-years wide, a quiet moat where few stars reside. It is not filled with chaos or debris. It is simply empty. This structure has endured for hundreds of millions of years, held together by the invisible grip of dark matter and the steady pull of gravity. The stars in the ring move in stable orbits, their motion measured and patient. Nothing here rushes. Nothing collides. The galaxy exists in a state of quiet agreement, each component knowing its place. What makes this sight so compelling is not scale or brightness, but restraint. In a universe filled with violent births and dramatic deaths, this galaxy feels composed. It does not demand attention through spectacle. It draws it through symmetry, through the rare feeling that something has settled into equilibrium and chosen to remain there. Even the light seems respectful of the form. The golden glow of the center fades gently outward, giving way to darkness before the blue ring emerges, sharp and luminous against the void. It feels like time itself has been layered into the structure, age at the heart, youth at the edge, and silence between. And yet, despite its calm appearance, this balance is not permanent. Over immense spans of time, the stars in the ring will burn through their fuel. The structure may soften. The symmetry may blur. But for now, the galaxy holds its shape, offering a rare moment of stillness carved into the movement of the cosmos. From this quiet geometry, a journey begins to loosen. Because beyond perfect circles and stable orbits, the universe also expresses beauty through motion. Through clouds that glow and twist, through regions where light is not contained, but scattered, shaped by heat and radiation into vast luminous forms. And so the path drifts onward, away from symmetry, and into the places where stars are still being born. Beyond the calm of symmetry, the universe grows softer at the edges. Shapes lose their hard lines. Light spreads instead of holding still. In these regions, matter has not yet settled into permanence. It drifts, gathers, and glows, suspended between what it was and what it will become. Here, vast clouds of gas and dust stretch across space like slow-moving weather systems. They are thin beyond imagination, yet immense in scale, spanning dozens of light-years from end to end. Within them, gravity begins its quiet work, drawing atoms together grain by grain, knot by knot, until density replaces emptiness and light begins to emerge. One such region hangs like a luminous veil against the darkness, its surface glowing in soft hues of crimson, violet, and pale blue. From a distance, it appears almost still, but nothing here is truly motionless. Radiation pours outward from newly formed stars buried deep inside, carving tunnels and cavities through the surrounding gas. Light pushes against matter, shaping it not with force, but with persistence. Within these glowing clouds, pillars rise like ancient monuments. Tall columns of dust stand silhouetted against brilliant backlight, their edges glowing where radiation strikes them most intensely. They look solid, almost architectural, yet they are fragile, slowly eroded by the very stars they help create. Every moment, particles are stripped away, lifted into space, their forms subtly reshaped. Deep inside these structures, the light dims. In those shadows, pockets of cold gas collapse inward, hidden from view. Gravity tightens its grip. Temperature rises. And in time, a new star ignites. Not with an explosion, but with a quiet ignition, a steady beginning that will last billions of years. These regions are nurseries, but they are not gentle places. Powerful winds stream outward from massive young stars, sweeping across the clouds like invisible tides. Jets of material erupt from forming stars, slicing through space at hundreds of kilometers per second, glowing briefly as they collide with surrounding gas. The result is motion frozen in light, streaks and knots scattered through the haze like brushstrokes on a canvas. What makes these nebulae beautiful is not just their color, but their depth. Layers overlap. Bright regions fade into darkness. Dense knots cast long shadows across glowing gas. The scene feels three-dimensional, as though one could drift into it and disappear among the folds. Light here does not illuminate evenly. It reveals selectively, allowing mystery to coexist with clarity. Despite their scale, these clouds are temporary. The same radiation that causes them to glow also ensures their destruction. Over a few million years, the gas will disperse, the pillars will thin, and the luminous structures will fade into transparency. The stars will remain, freed from the material that once cradled them, while the nebula that made them visible dissolves back into darkness. What remains is a quiet truth written into every glowing cloud. Creation is not neat. It is turbulent and uneven. It requires pressure and imbalance. Beauty here comes from tension, from matter resisting collapse just long enough for light to break through. From these regions of birth, the journey drifts onward. Because stars do not remain young. Time moves through them as surely as it moves through galaxies. And as stars age, their light changes, deepens, and eventually begins to fade, carrying with it a different kind of beauty. As stars age, their light softens. The sharp brilliance of youth gives way to a deeper glow, warmer in color and slower in rhythm. These are not stars in a hurry. They have burned steadily for millions, sometimes billions of years, and now they begin to change in ways that are visible even across vast distances. In the night sky, there are stars whose color feels different from the rest. Not white or blue, but red, almost ember-like. Their light does not flicker sharply. It breathes. These stars have expanded far beyond their original size, their outer layers swelling outward as the balance between gravity and fusion shifts. They are enormous, fragile, and quietly unstable. Within these aging giants, nuclear reactions have moved beyond simple hydrogen fusion. Heavier elements form in layered shells deep inside, each burning for a shorter time than the last. The core contracts as it grows denser, while the outer atmosphere loosens its grip, drifting outward in slow, uneven flows. Material is shed into surrounding space, forming vast envelopes of gas and dust that glow faintly in the star's light. The surface of such a star is anything but calm. Massive convection cells churn beneath the atmosphere, rising and falling like slow storms. Each cell can span distances greater than the orbit of Earth. Hot gas ascends, cools, and sinks again, creating shifting patterns that subtly alter the star's brightness. Over months and years, the star pulses, growing slightly brighter, then dimmer, as if exhaling. Eventually, for stars similar in mass to the Sun, this expansion cannot continue. The outer layers drift away completely, released in gentle waves rather than violent blasts. What remains of the center is a dense core, no longer capable of fusion, glowing only with stored heat. Around it, the expelled material forms a luminous shell, thin and delicate, illuminated from within. These shells expand slowly into space, forming planetary nebulae. Despite the name, they have nothing to do with planets. Early astronomers used the term because through small telescopes they appeared round and smooth, resembling distant worlds. In reality, they are the visible breath of a dying star, its final contribution to the cosmos. Some of these nebulae form nearly perfect rings. Others stretch into layered arcs or intricate filaments. The shapes depend on how the star shed its mass, on subtle asymmetries in rotation, magnetic fields, or unseen companions. Light from the central white dwarf ionizes the surrounding gas, causing it to glow in specific colors. Oxygen shines in cool blues and greens. Hydrogen glows red. Nitrogen adds faint amber tones. Together, they form structures that feel both scientific and deeply artistic. At the heart of each nebula, the white dwarf remains. Small, incredibly dense, and intensely hot, it radiates ultraviolet light, but keeps the surrounding shell luminous. Over billions of years, it will cool and fade, slipping into darkness. But for now, it holds the nebula in a brief moment of visibility, a final illumination before silence. These scenes carry a quiet kind of beauty. There is no violence here, no shock waves or collisions. Only release. A star letting go of what it no longer needs. The gas that once formed its outer layers drifts outward, thinning until it merges with the interstellar medium, enriched with elements forged deep inside the star. Carbon, oxygen, nitrogen, the building blocks of planets and life, return to space. From this recycled material, future generations of stars will form. Planets will gather. Systems will assemble. In this way, endings become beginnings, not through drama, but through patience. The universe does not waste what it creates. It reshapes it. From the gentle fading of stars, the journey continues outward, away from individual lives and into structures shaped not by fusion, but by gravity, alone. Because beyond stars and nebulae, beauty also emerges on scales where light is scarce, and motion unfolds over incomprehensible distances. When gravity begins to act on the largest scales, beauty takes on a different character. Light no longer belongs to single stars or glowing clouds. Instead, it stretches across millions of light years, smeared into arcs, pulled into tides, and bent into shapes that reveal the structure beneath the universe itself. Galaxies rarely exist in isolation. They gather in loose associations, drawn together by gravity's long reach. At first, these encounters are subtle. A slight elongation here. A faint bridge of stars there. Over time, the pull grows stronger. Paths curve inward. Halos overlap. Motion that once felt orderly begins to blur. In some regions of space, multiple galaxies become locked together in a slow, intricate dance. Their stars do not collide. The distances are far too vast for that. But gravity does not need contact. It works silently, reshaping entire systems over hundreds of millions of years. Spiral arms stretch outward like ribbons. Gas is stripped and flung into intergalactic space. Trails of light arc away from their original homes, tracing the invisible forces at work. From afar, these interactions look almost serene. Soft glows overlap. Edges blur into one another. But within them, enormous energies are being exchanged. Gas clouds compress as galaxies pass, igniting bursts of new star formation. Regions that were once quiet suddenly blaze with young blue stars, while other areas grow darker as material is pulled away. In the spaces between these galaxies, something unexpected appears. Not darkness, but glow. Gas heated by collision radiates faintly, revealing shock fronts stretching across tens of thousands of light years. These regions shine not because stars live there, but because matter itself has been stirred and energized by motion. What makes these scenes beautiful is their sense of movement, frozen in time. Arms caught mid-stretch, trails suspended as if brushed across the sky. The galaxies are changing, but so slowly that their transformation becomes sculptural. Motion becomes form. At the hearts of some of these galaxies, supermassive black holes awaken. As gas spirals inward, it heats and brightens, releasing tremendous energy before disappearing beyond the event horizon. These active cores shine across the electromagnetic spectrum, outshining entire galaxies around them. Yet even here, the violence is distant, muted by scale. The light travels for millions or billions of years before reaching us, softened by time. Eventually, these tangled systems settle. After countless orbits and gradual losses of energy, multiple galaxies merge into one. The sharp features of spirals fade. The structure smooths into a vast elliptical glow, populated by older stars and surrounded by faint shells, the remnants of what once was. The chaos resolves into quiet mass. This is one of the universe's most patient transformations. Nothing rushes. Nothing is wasted. Every interaction leaves a trace, even if only as a faint ripple in the distribution of stars. Gravity remembers. But beyond these gatherings, beyond even the largest clusters of galaxies, there exists another form of structure. One defined not by abundance, but by absence. A beauty that emerges not from light, but from the way light is missing. On the largest scales imaginable, the universe reveals a structure that is almost invisible at first glance. Not because it is small, but because it is subtle. Galaxies do not fill space evenly. They trace vast filaments, gathering along immense strands of dark matter that weave through the cosmos like a skeletal framework. Between these luminous threads lie regions of extraordinary emptiness. These are the great voids, expanses so vast that entire galaxy clusters could drift within them without ever meeting another. They are not holes torn into space, but regions where matter simply never gathered in large amounts. Gravity pulled elsewhere, leaving behind immense volumes of quiet. From a distance, these voids are not obvious. Only when astronomers map the positions and motions of thousands of galaxies does the pattern emerge. Bright knots connected by filaments, surrounding immense dark bubbles. The universe resembles a foam, its walls traced by light, its interior defined by absence. Within a typical void, there may be only a handful of faint galaxies, scattered across hundreds of millions of light-years. Compared to the crowded richness of clusters, these regions feel almost untouched. Light travels vast distances here without interruption. Motion slows. Interactions become rare. There is a strange elegance to this emptiness. The voids are not chaotic. They have shape. They push gently against the surrounding filaments as the universe expands, influencing the motion of galaxies along their edges. Even absence has gravity's fingerprint. What makes these regions beautiful is their restraint. In a universe filled with fire, collision, and constant transformation, the voids offer stillness on a scale that defies comprehension. They are the pauses between structures, the negative space that allows the cosmic web to exist at all. The galaxies along the edges of voids drift outward slightly faster than those embedded in dense regions, pulled less strongly by surrounding matter. Over billions of years, this motion deepens the emptiness, sharpening the contrast between rich filaments and silent interiors. The universe slowly sculpts itself, not just by gathering matter, but by letting space stretch where nothing resists it. To look into a void is to look into a kind of cosmic quiet. There are no bright nebulae here, no spiraling arms, no glowing clusters. Only darkness threaded faintly with distant points of light. And yet, this darkness is not empty of meaning. It defines the boundaries of everything else. From this silence, symmetry begins to matter again. After drifting through chaos, birth, and emptiness, the eye is drawn once more to rare structures where order emerges with uncanny precision. Places where gravity, motion, and time align so perfectly that the result feels intentional. There exists a galaxy where this alignment becomes almost impossible to ignore. It does not sprawl. It does not collide. It does not twist into spirals or blur into irregular forms. It holds a single, exact shape, suspended alone in the dark. At its center lies a compact core of old stars, smooth and evenly lit. Around it, far removed, floats a luminous ring, brilliant and blue, composed of stars much younger than those at the heart. Between them stretches a vast, empty gap, nearly devoid of light, as though the galaxy deliberately left space untouched. The ring curves with near-perfect circularity. Not oval, not warped, not broken. It is one of the most symmetrical structures ever observed on galactic scales. The stars within it orbit calmly, maintaining their distance from the core, held in place by a balance of gravity and momentum that has remained stable for hundreds of millions of years. There are no visible scars here, no tidal tails, no distorted arms, no nearby companions tugging at its edges. The galaxy exists in isolation, its shape preserved by solitude. How it formed remains uncertain. Theories suggest ancient collisions, slow internal evolution, or the gentle accretion of gas over time. None fully explain the precision that remains. The gap between the core and the ring is especially striking. Tens of thousands of light years wide, it is not filled with debris or fading stars. It is simply empty, a deliberate absence that enhances the clarity of the structure, much like silence between notes in music. Behind the ring, if one looks closely, distant galaxies appear framed by the open circle, their light passing through the hollow center. It is a reminder of scale layered upon scale, symmetry holding space open long enough for something else to be seen through it. This galaxy does not overwhelm with brightness or motion. It invites stillness. It asks for time. Its beauty comes not from energy, but from balance, from the rare moment when the universe seems content to hold a shape without altering it. From this quiet perfection, the journey begins its final drift. There are no larger structures to visit, no brighter lights ahead. Only reflection remains, because after witnessing birth, motion, fading, emptiness, and symmetry, what lingers is not any single object, but the pattern connecting them all. What begins to emerge after moving through all these forms is a quiet consistency. The universe does not repeat itself, yet it echoes. Rings appear in different scales. Clouds give way to stars. Stars give way to shells. Shells dissolve into space. Motion slows, then gathers again somewhere else. Nothing ends completely. Nothing remains unchanged. Even light itself participates in this rhythm. It bends when gravity asks it to. It scatters when dust stands in its way. It fades as distance grows, yet it never truly disappears. Every photon carries a memory of where it has been, stretched thinner by the expansion of space, softened by time, but still moving forward. There are moments where beauty emerges not from structure, but from illusion, from alignment, from chance perspectives that reveal something deeper about the laws underneath. In these moments, the universe briefly turns itself inside out, allowing gravity to become visible. Far across the cosmos, light from a distant, violent source begins a journey. It leaves a blazing core where matter spirals into darkness, releasing energy more intense than entire galaxies. That light travels for billions of years, crossing expanding space, thinning and cooling, until it encounters something unexpected. A massive galaxy drifts into its path. The galaxy itself does nothing extraordinary. It simply exists. Its mass curves the fabric of space around it, creating a subtle depression in the geometry of the universe. As the ancient light passes through this warped region, it does not continue straight. It bends. It splits. It follows multiple paths through curved spacetime, each route slightly different, each distance slightly longer or shorter. By the time the light reaches us, it no longer arrives as a single point. It arrives as several. Identical in origin, separated by space and time, arranged with remarkable symmetry around the foreground galaxy. What appears is not duplication, but delay. The same moment, seen multiple times, layered across the sky. Here, beauty comes from revelation. Gravity, usually invisible, announces itself through geometry. Time itself becomes visible, stacked gently in light. Each image carries the same information, but from a slightly different path, arriving moments, days, or even years apart. This phenomenon is fleeting. The alignment will not last forever. As galaxies move and space continues to stretch, the symmetry will dissolve. The images will blur. The illusion will fade. But for now, it holds, offering a quiet demonstration of how deeply intertwined space, time, and gravity truly are. And beyond these alignments, beyond lenses and rings, the universe continues its slow expansion. Galaxies drift farther apart. Voids grow wider. Light takes longer to cross the same distances. The observable universe becomes both larger and lonelier with every passing moment. Yet even as expansion accelerates, structure persists. Local groups remain bound. Stars continue to form. Planets continue to gather. On small scales, gravity resists the stretching of space, preserving islands of matter amid the widening sea. This balance between expansion and connection shapes everything that exists. It determines where galaxies gather and where voids deepen. It decides which regions glow with life and which fall into darkness. And through it all, beauty emerges not as an exception, but as a consequence. The universe does not choose elegance. It follows rules. But when those rules unfold over enough time and distance, elegance appears anyway, in curves carved by gravity, in shells shaped by dying stars, in emptiness that gives meaning to presence. As the journey nears its quiet end, the objects themselves begin to matter less than the spaces between them. The pauses, the silences, the slow transitions from one form to another. It becomes clear that beauty in the universe is not confined to places of activity. It exists just as fully in stillness. And in that stillness, everything we have seen begins to settle. The glow fades. The motion slows. The patterns remain. As distance stretches and detail softens, the universe begins to feel less like a collection of objects and more like a single, continuous process. The boundaries between things blur. Birth flows into aging. Structure fades into space. Light becomes memory. At this scale, nothing exists alone. Every star carries the chemistry of earlier stars. Every galaxy bears the scars of interactions long finished. Even the emptiest regions are shaped by forces acting far beyond their borders. What looks isolated is simply connected in ways that are harder to see. The universe does not favor permanence. Everything visible is temporary, even the grandest structures. Rings disperse, nebulae thin, galaxies merge and smooth out. Over immense spans of time, complexity gives way to simplicity, then begins again elsewhere. This cycle unfolds without intention, yet it produces moments of astonishing harmony along the way. Some of the most beautiful scenes arise precisely because they do not last. A shell of gas glowing briefly around a dying star. A lensing alignment that holds for only a cosmic instant. A nebula illuminated just long enough to reveal its shape before dissolving. These are not flaws in the universe's design. They are features of its rhythm. Light plays a special role in this story. It is both messenger and artist. It carries information across space, but it also shapes what we see. Filtered through dust, stretched by expansion, bent by gravity, light turns invisible processes into visible form. Without it, the universe would still exist, but its beauty would remain hidden. Even color itself is a translation. Reds and blues mark motion and energy. Greens and violets trace ionized gas. Golds and whites reveal ancient populations of stars. None of these hues exist as they appear. They are interpretations, ways of turning wavelengths into something the mind can understand. And yet, through this translation, meaning emerges. As motion slows in perception, attention drifts toward patterns rather than events. Circles repeat. Shells recur. Filaments branch and reconnect. These are not coincidences. They are the natural outcomes of systems seeking balance under gravity and pressure. The universe experiments constantly, but it does so within boundaries set by its laws. On the largest scales, those laws produce a strange kind of order, a web spanning billions of light-years, dense nodes glowing with galaxies, vast empty regions holding them apart. It is not symmetrical, yet it feels coherent, not designed yet unmistakably structured. And within this immense architecture, the objects once thought separate begin to feel like expressions of the same thing. A nebula is a galaxy in miniature. A galaxy collision echoes the turbulence inside a star-forming cloud. A fading star mirrors the slow quieting of a merging system. Scale changes, but the language remains. This is perhaps the most subtle beauty of all. Not the brilliance of individual sights, but the continuity that links them. The sense that nothing here is isolated, but every glow, every shadow, every silence is part of a single unfolding story. As the journey continues to thin, soundless, and slow, even that story begins to loosen. Details matter less. The universe becomes impression rather than image. Motion without direction. Light without source. Space without edge. And somewhere within that vastness, everything seen so far settles into place. Not as memories to hold on to, but as traces that quietly remain. By now, the journey feels less like movement and more like suspension. The sense of traveling from place to place dissolves, replaced by the feeling of hovering within something immense. The universe no longer appears as a sequence of destinations, but as a single environment, vast enough to contain every beginning and every ending at once. At this depth of scale, distance loses its sharpness. Millions of light-years become gestures rather than measurements. Time stretches until events blur into eras. The difference between now and then feels less important than the continuity connecting them. Stars form, burn, and fade, but the matter they release continues on. It drifts quietly through space, mixing with gas that has already lived other lives. Eventually, gravity gathers it again. New stars ignite. New systems emerge. The universe does not reset. It recycles. Even the most dramatic transformations leave behind gentler echoes. A galaxy collision smooths into a single glow. A supernova remnant expands until it is indistinguishable from surrounding space. What remains is not the event, but the distribution of matter it reshaped. Beauty lingers not in the moment of change, but in the patterns that follow. Light, too, grows softer with age. Photons released billions of years ago still travel, stretched by the expansion of space, cooled until their energy barely whispers. Some reach us as faint backgrounds, a diffuse glow that fills the universe evenly in all directions. A reminder that everything luminous eventually becomes subtle. The universe has no center and no edge, yet it feels layered. Dense regions wrapped around emptiness. Activity framed by silence. Motion defined by stillness. This balance gives shape to everything we see. Without voids, filaments would have no form. Without darkness, light would have no contrast. What we call beauty emerges from this balance. Not because the universe aims for it, but because balance produces clarity. It allows structures to stand out, to persist just long enough to be seen. It gives meaning to fleeting moments by placing them within something vast and continuous. At some point, attention stops clinging to individual objects altogether. Nebulae, galaxies, stars, rings, and voids merge into a single impression. A sense of scale so large it becomes calming rather than overwhelming. There is comfort in knowing that nothing here is rushed. Everything unfolds at its own pace. The universe is not in a hurry to explain itself. It offers glimpses, not conclusions. Shapes appear, then fade. Alignments hold briefly, then drift apart. Even the most precise symmetry eventually softens, and that is not loss. It is simply change continuing. As the journey approaches its quiet end, what remains is not a list of wonders, but a feeling, a recognition that beauty in the universe is not rare or fragile. It is constant, woven into the way matter moves and light behaves. It does not depend on observation. It exists whether it is seen or not. The cosmos does not perform. It simply unfolds. And in that unfolding, beauty emerges again and again, quietly, patiently, without needing to be named. At this point in the journey, even scale begins to feel gentle. The numbers that once felt immense lose their sharpness, not because they are smaller, but because the mind has stopped trying to contain them. The universe becomes something to rest inside rather than measure. There is a quiet shift that happens when distance is no longer intimidating, when millions and billions of years feel less like barriers and more like currents. Time stops feeling like a line and starts to feel like a field, something everything moves through together. Stars that were once separate stories now feel like variations of the same process. Some are just beginning, wrapped in glowing clouds. Others are old and swollen, shedding light and matter into space. Others still have faded almost entirely, leaving behind only faint traces of heat or gravity. None of them are isolated events. They are expressions of the same long rhythm. Even the darkest regions no longer feel empty. Void and silence take on their own presence. They become spaces where motion slows enough to be noticed, where the absence of light becomes a form of structure. These vast, quiet regions are not mistakes in the universe's design. They are the spaces that allow everything else to exist with clarity. The universe breathes in this way. Matter gathers, then releases. Light ignites, then fades. Structures rise, hold for a while, and gently dissolve. Nothing resists this process. There is no struggle against time, only participation in it. At the edges of perception, everything begins to blur into atmosphere. Shapes soften. Motion smooths out. Even gravity's pull feels less like force and more like guidance, gently shaping paths rather than dictating them. This is where beauty becomes less visual and more experiential. It is no longer about what is seen, but about the feeling of scale, continuity, and patience. The sense that the universe is vast enough to hold contradiction without tension. Creation and decay coexisting without urgency. In this state, the universe feels less like a place and more like a condition. Something that simply is. No beginning required. No ending expected. Just motion unfolding at a pace so slow it feels eternal. Light continues to travel, even when it is no longer noticed. Matter continues to drift, even when it is no longer named. The universe does not wait for attention. It does not pause for observation. It continues whether it is witnessed or not. And yet, for a moment, awareness lingers here. Not to analyze or explain, but simply to remain. To rest inside the vastness rather than move through it. To let the immensity settle instead of rushing past it. The journey has covered birth and symmetry, motion and silence, brilliance and absence. Now those distinctions begin to dissolve. What remains is a quiet sense of belonging within something unimaginably large, something that does not need interpretation to be felt. As the journey stretches on, even the idea of movement becomes subtle. There is no longer a sense of traveling forward or outward. Instead, everything feels suspended, as though drifting within a single, endless moment. The universe does not rush toward conclusions. It allows processes to unfold at their own pace, measured not in seconds or years, but in eras. Stars live entire lifetimes without urgency. Galaxies reshape themselves so slowly that their transformations feel almost invisible. Even expansion itself happens quietly, without sound or signal. What once felt like contrast now feels like continuity. Light and dark no longer oppose each other. They define one another. Bright regions only stand out because of the silence around them. Structure only feels meaningful because of the emptiness that frames it. The glow of distant stars softens until it blends into a faint background. Individual points of light lose their edges, merging into a gentle haze. The universe becomes less about objects and more about presence. A vast field where matter and energy move in harmony without drawing attention to themselves. There is something deeply calming in this realization. Nothing here is strained. Nothing is forced. The universe is not trying to become anything other than what it already is. It simply follows the paths laid out by gravity, energy, and time, allowing complexity to arise naturally and allowing it to fade just as naturally. Even memory feels different at this scale. Events do not disappear when they pass. They leave imprints, distributions of matter, faint radiation, subtle motions that carry history forward without words. The universe remembers not through narrative, but through structure. As awareness drifts through this vastness, it becomes clear that beauty is not confined to special moments. It is present even when nothing dramatic is happening. In the slow cooling of a white dwarf, in the patient orbit of stars around a galactic core, in the steady expansion of space itself. The cosmos does not distinguish between what is spectacular and what is quiet. Both are necessary. Both arise from the same rules. And both pass into the same continuity. Here, at this depth of calm, the universe feels less like a subject to observe and more like a place to rest. Not something to solve, but something to allow. The need to understand fades, replaced by acceptance. Everything that exists is already in motion, already changing, already complete in its impermanence. There is no final state to reach, only a flow to remain within. The journey continues to soften. Edges blur. Distances lose meaning. What remains is a gentle awareness of scale, patience, and connection, held together by nothing more than time itself. At this stage of the journey, the universe feels almost weightless. Not empty, but effortless. As though everything that needed to happen has already found its place, and what remains is simply the continuation of motion without urgency. There is a softness to this vastness that is easy to overlook. From a distance, space seems harsh, cold, and unforgiving. But when viewed across long spans of time, it reveals a different character. Gentle, patient, and remarkably forgiving. Stars are allowed to fail and try again. Matter is given endless opportunities to rearrange itself into new forms. Nothing is ever truly lost. When a star sheds its outer layers, those atoms do not vanish. They drift, cool, and mix with surrounding clouds. When galaxies merge, their stars do not collide or shatter. They pass through one another, guided into new orbits, carrying their histories forward intact. Even light, once released, is never recalled. It continues outward indefinitely, thinning but persistent. The universe is generous with time. It allows processes to unfold without pressure. There is no deadline for completion, no final arrangement that must be achieved. Structures appear, linger, and dissolve, all within a larger continuity that remains unbroken. At this depth of calm, distinctions between scales fade almost completely. A planetary nebula expanding at tens of kilometers per second feels conceptually similar to a galaxy cluster drifting apart over billions of years. The difference lies only in duration and size, not in nature. Everything follows the same quiet rules. Even gravity, so often associated with collapse and destruction, feels gentle here. It does not rush matter into chaos. It shapes paths, curves motion, and allows balance to emerge where conditions permit. When balance fails, gravity does not punish. It simply redirects. The universe feels less like a sequence of events and more like a continuous landscape, one that stretches in all directions without edges or borders. There is no beginning visible from here, and no ending implied. Only an ongoing presence that remains steady even as its details change. Light continues to soften as it travels. What was once a brilliant flash becomes a faint glow, then a whisper of radiation barely distinguishable from the background. Yet even this faintness carries meaning. It tells of origins long past, of moments when energy was released and sent outward into the dark. At some point, attention naturally loosens its grip. There's nothing left to anticipate. No new structures waiting to appear. The universe does not promise novelty at every moment. Sometimes it simply offers space. And that space is enough. This is where the journey becomes less about seeing and more about allowing. Allowing distance to exist without measurement. Allowing time to pass without marking it. allowing the universe to remain vast without needing to define it. Everything that has been encountered still exists somewhere within this immensity. Rings hold their shape. Nebulae glow softly. Stars pulse and fade. Voids expand. All of it continues quietly, whether noticed or not. The universe does not require an ending to feel complete. It does not ask for conclusions or summaries. It is content to continue, unfolding slowly, carrying all of its beauty forward without pause. By now, the universe feels less like something being observed and more like something being inhabited. The distinction between foreground and background dissolves. There is no longer a sense of looking outward. Everything exists within the same expansive field. At this scale, even silence has texture. It is not an absence, but a condition, a steady backdrop against which all motion takes place. Stars move through it. Galaxies glide within it. Light crosses it patiently, never expecting to arrive anywhere in particular. The idea of distance becomes almost gentle. Separation no longer implies isolation. Everything remains connected through gravity, through shared origins, through the slow exchange of matter and energy across time. Even regions that will never touch again still share a past, a moment when they were closer, denser, part of the same early fabric. The universe carries no urgency about change. It allows systems to linger, to hover in near equilibrium for millions of years, to shift only when imbalance becomes unavoidable. This patience gives rise to clarity. Structures are not rushed into existence. They emerge gradually, given time to settle into form. In this extended calm, the universe begins to feel self-sustaining. No external input is required. No direction imposed. Everything unfolds from within, guided by simple principles applied over immense spans of time. Energy flows from dense regions to sparse ones. Heat dissipates. Motion smooth. Over the longest scales, contrast fades. Differences soften. Yet even as the universe trends toward quiet uniformity, pockets of complexity continue to arise, allowed by local conditions, preserved by N. Gravity's gentle resistance. This balance between smoothing and structuring is constant. Expansion pulls outward. Gravity gathers inward. Neither wins completely. Their interplay keeps the universe dynamic without making it chaotic. Here, beauty is no longer something that draws attention. It does not stand out. It surrounds. It exists in the fact that nothing needs to hurry, that there is room for everything to happen slowly. Stars continue to shine, not because they must, but because conditions allow them to. Galaxies continue to rotate, not because they were set in motion deliberately, but because momentum persists. Voids continue to widen, not because space is being emptied, but because matter prefers to gather elsewhere. Nothing feels wasted. Even the faintest radiation contributes to the background glow. Even the smallest motion alters future paths. Everything participates, whether visible or not. The universe becomes a place of long thoughts, of extended pauses, of processes that unfold too slowly to demand attention, yet too steadily to ever truly stop. At this point, the journey is no longer about progression. It is about remaining, about allowing awareness to float within scale rather than move across it. The need to reach an endpoint fades. There is no destination implied by this vastness. Everything that exists continues to exist within this calm expansion. And everything that will exist is already latent within the matter and energy that remains. The universe does not promise resolution. It offers continuity. The universe now feels almost motionless, Not because nothing is happening, but because everything that happens unfolds on timescales too long to create urgency. Change exists, but it moves like a tide rather than a wave. Slow, inevitable, and quiet. At this depth of stillness, even gravity feels subtle. Its pull is everywhere, yet rarely dramatic. It curves paths gently, nudges matter inward or outward, and allows balance to persist for extraordinary lengths of time. Most of what exists is neither collapsing nor exploding. It is simply continuing. Light glides through this environment without resistance. It does not hurry. It does not fade abruptly. It stretches, thins, cools, and softens, becoming part of a faint background that fills all of space. This ancient glow carries the memory of stars long gone, of galaxies that have already changed shape, of moments that no longer exist anywhere except in the motion bar, of photons still traveling. The universe does not store its history in records or remnants alone. It stores it in distribution, in where matter ended up, in how energy spread, in the directions things continue to move. History is not behind us here. It is everywhere at once. Even the largest structures no longer feel imposing. Clusters of galaxies soften into luminous fogs. Filaments lose their sharpness. Voids feel less empty and more open. Everything blends into a continuous environment where contrast exists without tension. This is where beauty becomes nearly indistinguishable from calm. There is no single feature to focus on, no object to frame, no event to wait for. The universe offers presence rather than spectacle. Processes continue quietly beneath this calm surface. Stars still form in distant clouds. Others still age and release their material. Galaxies still drift and reshape. But these events feel less like interruptions and more like gentle ripples passing through an already vast sea. At this scale, nothing feels separate. Every particle belongs to the same story. Every photon shares the same origin. Everything that exists emerged from the same early conditions and has been diverging slowly ever since. There is no pressure here to understand or interpret. The universe does not ask to be solved. It allows itself to be experienced simply as it is. Large, patient, and indifferent to attention. This is not emptiness. It is fullness without clutter. Space filled not with objects, but with continuity, with time allowed to pass without being measured. The journey does not feel as though it is approaching something. It feels as though it has settled into where it has always been. Here, near the far edge of motion and thought, the universe feels almost transparent, not invisible, but unobtrusive, as if it no longer needs to announce itself through form or light. Everything that once demanded attention now rests quietly within a larger whole. The brilliance of nebulae, the symmetry of rings, the drama of collisions, all of it remains, but softened by distance and time, folded gently into the background. What remains most clearly is rhythm, expansion and gathering, illumination and fading, emergence and release. These patterns repeat without repetition, familiar without becoming predictable. The universe does not cycle. It flows. There is a comfort in this continuity. Nothing here feels unfinished. Even processes that will take trillions of years feel complete in their unfolding. The universe does not wait for outcomes. It exists within them. At this depth of calm, the need for boundaries disappears. There is no clear division between object and space, between event and aftermath. Everything is transition, everything is mid-becoming. Light continues its journey, not toward destinations, but through conditions. Matter continues to drift, not toward ends, but into new arrangements. Time continues to pass, not toward conclusion, but into extension. This vastness does not overwhelm anymore. It supports. It holds everything that has happened and everything that will, without strain or urgency. There is room for all of it. Nothing here insists on meaning. And yet, meaning emerges anyway, quietly, from persistence alone. From the fact that existence continues, calmly, without needing to justify itself. The universe does not speak. It does not explain. It simply remains, allowing everything within it to take its time. And within this stillness, the journey rests. Not because it has ended, but because there is nowhere else it needs to go. Eventually, even the sense of drifting fades. There is no longer a feeling of movement through space or time, only a quiet awareness of something vast, steady, and unbroken. The universe does not resolve itself into answers. It does not tighten into conclusions or arrive at a final shape. It continues, patient and indifferent, allowing every process to unfold at its own pace. Stars will keep forming where conditions allow. Others will keep fading, releasing their light and matter back into the dark. Galaxies will continue their slow rearrangement. Voids will widen. Light will travel on. Nothing here asks to be remembered. Nothing asks to be understood all at once. The beauty that exists does so without needing attention, without needing meaning assigned to it. It is simply the natural result of time, motion, and gravity working together over unimaginable scales. What has been seen is not a collection of rare wonders, but glimpses of a larger continuity. A reminder that beauty in the universe is not fragile or fleeting. It is woven into the way things are allowed to exist, in the way matter gathers and releases, in the way light moves and softens, in the way silence frames everything else. There is comfort in knowing that nothing here is rushed, that the universe does not hurry toward an ending, that even as forms change and structures dissolve, the larger flow remains calm and unbroken. And so the journey does not truly end. It simply becomes quiet enough to rest within. The universe continues on, vast and patient, carrying its beauty forward without effort, without pause, long after attention drifts away.